In this lesson, we will start talking about loops, which is a very important concept in computer programming. Loops are structures of repetition. We use them to repeat the same lines of code multiple times. We can also use loops to iterate over lists, tuples, dictionaries, and even strings, as I will show you a bit later. Let's start with the while loop. So this is how you write it. First, let's start a variable called x, and let's assign a value of 0. Then, let's create a list of people that is going to start as an empty list. Now this is how we start a loop. We're going to use the keyword while, and then we are going to write a condition. In this case, this condition is going to be x is less than 5. Now there will be this indentation just like the if structure. So everything that is aligned here to this point is going to be inside the while loop. So if this test returns true, it's going to go inside the loop. So once we are inside, let's create a new variable for a person. And let's ask the user to type the name of a person. Then let's append this person to the list called people. Now we are done here, but if we keep it like this loop is going to run forever. Because when we finish here, it's going to keep running again and again and again until this doesn't return true anymore. But this is not going to happen because we are not changing the value of x. So what we need to do is, in every iteration of this loop, we have to increment the value of x. So we can do it by typing x equals x plus 1. This is one way of incrementing the value of a variable, but there is a simpler way, which is by using the increment operator. So we just wrote the same thing, but using an incremental operator. So this means x equals x plus 1. So this is going to be running in a loop until this test results in false. When this happens, then we're going to continue with our program. In this case, let's just print the list of people. Let's see how this works. Now we can see that our program ran the loop 5 times, and then when that test returned false, it continued with the rest of the code, which was this print statement. We could have done it with less lines of code. Since we are adding people to a list in every iteration of the loop, we can use the length of the list to control the loop. So instead of using x, so let's erase this, we can use the length of that list called people, which in the first iteration of the loop is going to be 0. But as we add more people to the list, it's going to increase, and when this is 5 or greater, we're going to jump out of the loop. So in this case, we don't need to increment the value of any variable. Let's try it again. And now we can see that we had the same result. We can also jump out of loops using the break statement. Let's do a program to make a guess game. In this case, let's start with a variable called number with the value of 5. Let's create another variable called guess, and let's get a user input. Let's pass a message like, I'm thinking about a number. Can you guess it? Let's convert this to integer so we can compare with the number we have here. Let's make this a bit easier. Between 0 and 10. And now we're going to have to give the user multiple chances until he can guess what the number is. So for that, we can use a loop. In this case, let's just start a loop that will run forever. We can do this by typing while true, because every time this test returns true, the loop is going to be executed. So in this case, the loop is going to be executed forever, unless we stop the execution with a break statement, which is what we are going to do. So inside here, if guess equals number, that means that the user just guessed the number correctly. So in this case, what we're going to do is using a break statement. So the break statement will stop the execution of the loop and jump out of it. If that doesn't happen, we're going to get the guess again. So let's do it like this. Let's run it and see what happens. All right, let's try 2. So what just happened here? We typed 2, which was assigned to this variable, and now we are inside this loop. Since the guess is not equal to number, we just enter this else statement, and now we're gonna have infinite chances until we can guess the number correctly. If I type 1, 9, 8, this is going to run forever until I can guess the number. So in this case, we are just going to break the execution of the loop. I just forgot that after the loop, I should have written something like, you guessed it. I was thinking about, and then the number. Let's try again. 1, 2, 3, 4. When we do it right, you guessed it. I was thinking about 5. Now we can make our game even cooler by picking a random number. We can use the random module for that. So before starting the program, let's import the random module. Now the number is going to be random.randint, which is going to pick a random integer in a range of 0 to 10. So if we do this, now we don't know what the number is, so we really have to guess it. Really cool, right? So this was all for this lesson. In the next lesson, we will learn another kind of loop, which is the for loop. I'll see you then. In this lesson, we will talk about for loops. For loops in Python work as sequence iterators. So let's create a list that we know is a sequence of elements. So this list is going to be called blog posts. Now let's write some blog post titles. Now, how could we print all the blog posts of that list using the same lines of code? Doesn't matter how many posts we have in the list. We could start a variable with the value of 0, then start a while loop, and use that variable as an index to print each blog post. But it's actually way easier to do this using the for loop. So this is how it works. We're going to write for, and then we're going to create a variable. So let's create one called post. And then we're going to use the in keyword, and then the sequence we want to iterate over. So the first time we run this loop, this title is going to be assigned to the post variable. In the second time, it's going to be this one, and then this one until the end of the list. And we don't have to control the number of iterations because the for loop is going to do that automatically for us. So in every iteration, we are going to print the post which is going to be each element of this list. If we do this and run, we just printed the titles of our blog posts one by one. So no matter how many blog posts we have, this is always going to work. Remember we learned the break statement in the previous lesson? There is also the continue statement, which doesn't interrupt the loop, it just goes to the next iteration. So let's use it to avoid printing empty blog posts. Let's say for any reason we have some empty values here. So let's add one here and one here. Let's try again and see what happens. And now we have these empty values being printed here. So how can we avoid it? Inside the loop, we are going to check if our post is an empty string. If it is, we are going to use the continue statement, which is going to jump out of the loop, but it's not going to interrupt the loop. It's just going to jump out of it and go to the next iteration. So if the post is empty, it's just not going to do anything. Else, it's going to print the title of the post. Let's see if this is better. Now I just forgot the two equal signs. Remember I told you not to forget about it, and I just did it. Let's try again. And now we didn't print the empty strings. Remember, a string is also a sequence. So we can also loop through all characters of a string. So let's create a string here. Now let's do a for loop to iterate over this string. So the variable name is going to be char. The sequence is going to be my string. And at every iteration, we are going to print the character. Let's just create a separator here, so this is more organized. Now let's see what happens. And now we can see that we just iterated over a string. We can also define a specific number of iterations by using the range function. So we could do it like for x in range. Let's go from 0 to 10. And now let's print x. And by doing that, we just printed 10 numbers. We can also use the for loop in dictionaries. So let's create a new dictionary. Now we can loop through this dictionary by doing for key in person. Then we can just print the key, then a colon. And now we can just use the name of the dictionary and use the key variable as the key. So here's how this is going to work. So this way we just listed all the elements of that dictionary. Like conditionals, loops can also be nested. So we can use loops inside loops. We can also use loops inside conditionals, conditionals inside loops, and so on. So let's get this blog posts variable we just created. Let's print another separator here. Now this is going to be a dictionary. And here we're going to have the name of a category, say Python. And assigned to this key, we're going to have a list of blog posts. So we have some blog posts about Python. Now let's add a new property to this dictionary, which is going to be, let's say, JavaScript. And now we're going to have another list of posts. Now, how can we print all the blog posts by category? We could do like for category in blog posts. And then every time we use a for loop with a dictionary, at every iteration, the key is going to be assigned as the value of this variable. So in the first iteration of this loop, Python is going to be assigned to the category variable. So in this case, we're going to print posts about, and then the category, which is Python. Now we're going to start a new loop inside this loop. So for post in, now we're going to have to use blog posts with the category key, which is going to result in this first list in the first iteration of the loop. So by doing this, we can just print the title of the blog post. When it finishes, it's going to start the first loop again, and then the next category is going to be JavaScript. Then it's going to print posts about JavaScript, and then it's going to iterate over the list of JavaScript posts, which we can get this way. Let's see if this works. Now we can see posts about Python, and then it lists all the posts. And now we have posts about JavaScript and the two posts about JavaScript. Really cool, right? This might be a bit confusing in the beginning, so if you have any questions, just leave it in the Q&A section. This is all for this lesson, so I'll see you in the next video. Hi there! Let's exercise what we just learned about loops. Number 1. Create a program that asks the user for 8 names and store them in a list. When all the names have been given, pick a random one and print it. Number 2. Create a guess game with the names of the colors. At each round, choose a random color from a list and let the user try to guess it. When he does it, ask if he wants to play again. Keep playing until the user types no. I think this is going to be a very nice challenge. So good luck, and when you're finished, come back here to see the solution. So for the first one, let's start creating a loop to ask for the 8 names. But before, we need to create an empty list. Now let's use a for loop. So for x in range. I think this is the easiest way. So person is going to be an input with the message type the name of a person. Then we are going to append that person to the list called people. Now when this is over, we have to pick a random person. So in this case, let's create a variable called index, and let's use the random module. So let's import the random module, and let's get a random number. So random.randint. If we have 8 names, we're going to have indexes ranging from 0 to 7. Now the random person is going to be someone in the list called people, and then we are going to use this random index that we just got. Now let's print picking a random person, then random person. Let's see if this is working. Now we just sent 8 people to a list and then picked a random one. So there you have the solution for exercise number 1. Now let's go to number 2. In this exercise, we need to create a guess game with the names of the colors. So let's create a list for the names of colors. I'm just gonna put some colors here. Now let's create an infinite loop to keep playing until the user types no. So while true, we know that if we do this, we're going to create an infinite loop. So let's pick a random color, and for that, we're also going to need the random module. So import random. And now as an index for the list of colors, we're going to use a random number, and the range we are going to use is from 0 until the length of that list minus 1, which is going to be the last index of this list. So remember I told you it was going to be useful to work with the length of a list. So in this case, we just have a list with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 colors. So we're going to pick a random number between 0 and 7, which is going to be used as an index of this list. So this means we're going to pick a random color. Now let's create a variable called guess. Let's get an input. I'm thinking about a color. Can you guess it? Now we can use a nested loop. So let's open a new infinite loop. So when we enter this loop, we are going to test if color has the same value of guess. In this case, the person just guessed it right. So if this is true, we are going to break out of this loop. This one here. If not, we're gonna get a new guess. So in this case, we're just gonna write nope, try again. And this is going to be running forever until the person can guess the color. When the person can guess the color, this is going to break out of this loop. When it breaks out of this loop, let's go back to this position. We can just print, you guessed it. I was thinking about, and then the color. Now something important to do is comparing the guess, but using the lower method, which is going to transform the input to lowercase. Because remember that Python is case sensitive. We already talked about this. So now let's create a variable called play again. Which will be an input with the following message. Let's play again. Type no to quit. So if play again equals no, or let's use play again with the lower method. So if this is equal to no, we can just break out of this loop, which is the level we are in right now. So here we are inside this loop. So when we type break, it's going to break out of this loop here. So after we break out of this loop, we can print something like, it was fun, thanks for playing. Now let's see if this is working. I'm thinking about a color. Let me see. Red. Didn't make it. White. Blue. Green. Yellow. You guessed it, I was thinking about yellow. Let's play again. Type no to quit. So I just hit enter and let's see if this is going to repeat. It started again. So let's try again. White, blue, red, yellow, green, purple. You guessed it, I was thinking about purple. Let's play again. This time let's type no with a capital N to test if the lower function is working. And it's working. Really cool, right? So there you have the solution for exercise number 2. I know this was a bigger challenge, but I hope you were able to do it without any problem. If you have any questions, just leave it in the Q&A section. If not, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.